Hi everyone. This webinar is essentially an update on existing resources. And the image in the screen, which I think you're all seeing, which is of three buttercup leaves, is an example of one of the resources which is already available. So for those of you who haven't found this yet, I'm not going to cover everything this evening. I'm going to cover some additional identification tips, but you need to know where the originals are. So if you haven't found them already, there is the pathway at the bottom of the screen there from the Herefordshire Meadows website. You go to Meadow Restoration, Survey and Monitoring, Plant Identification and Monitoring, and you'll find a whole series of these mini herbarium sheets called Problem Pairs Solved. Okay, we're not going to dwell on this one. I think we probably mostly know our buttercups. Incidentally, it's a really good time if you struggle with bulbous buttercup to get out and look for it now. I've been in gang-mown grasslands in Hereford and astonished to find that many of them are full of bulbous buttercup showing really nicely at the moment. Right, in your feedback from the summer event, it was quite clear that one of the main things you wanted to have another opportunity to look at was yellow composites, dandelion lookalikes. So we're going to do a bit of revision and development of those in the light of experience that we've all had in reviewing the monitoring results from all of the different tranches. Worth saying that field guides give a false impression of the diversity of groups like yellow composites and umbellifers. They look very baffling, but in fact the number of these taxa that you are likely to encounter is very much more modest. Hence my suggestion that if you have a field guide with you this evening, grab a pencil so that you can asterisk or ring the taxa that I'm talking about, as these will be the ones you're most likely to find. Okay, and you'll notice that we're doing a little bit of focusing on non-flowering characters this evening, which I think are of use in helping you over a longer period of time. So the main thing with yellow composites, as you may have heard me say before, is to try and assess which of these three types you're dealing with. You need to ask yourself two questions. Is the flowering stem simple, as in number 1, or branched, as in numbers 2 and 3? And are the leaves all at the base of the plant, as in 1 and 2, or are there leaves on the stem, as in 3? Here's an example of number 1. This is a plant with an unbranched stem and all of its leaves at the base. Dandelions fall into this category. We're not going to dwell on them. I think you'll recognize the dandelion. Mouse-ear hawkweed, the plant which has lemon yellow flowers, unlike all the other egg yolk yellow flowers, falls into this category. But if you're stumped by a bright yellow composite with all of its leaves in a rosette and an unbranched stem, you're dealing almost certainly with rough hawkbit. There's actually two plants that fit the bill here. There's the lesser hawkbit 2, but you're far more likely to be dealing with rough hawkbit. Lesser hawkbit is a plant of dry pasture, unlikely to be picked up in our harvesting practices. and lesser hawkbit, you really need the flowers, the fruits, I beg your pardon, to be able to clinch that. Um, Typically, lesser hawkbit has no hairs at the top of the stem. It only has the hairs at the bottom of the stem. For those of you that have never double checked this feature, both of those hawkbits, rough and lesser, can be confirmed even before they put their flowering stem up by the presence of forked hairs. And if you've never had the pleasure of looking at those under a lens for yourself, this is what you'll see. Here's the flowering stem at the bottom with its branched hairs, and here's a leaf too, meaning you can sometimes identify these plants before they even put their flower scape out. The branched hairs in rough and lesser hawkbits, but particular rough hawkbit. Here's a picture of a plant in the second category, which has still got all of its leaves in a basal rosette, but this time it has a branched stem. Okay? We'll talk a little bit more in a second or two about the presence of very small little bracts on here. When I'm asking you to look for whether the stem is leafy or not, we're talking about big, substantial leaves, not tiny little scales like this. Okay? Plants of this second type, category 2, are two main ones that you're dealing with. Common cat's ear, that was common cat's ear there, a pressed specimen. Common cat's ear. Common cat's ear has got rather broad leaves with prominent lobes and a very rough textured leaf. I've heard people say it's the small scales on the stem that give cat's ear its name. I don't know what it is, to be honest with you, but to my mind, the texture of the leaf is what recalls a cat's ear, if anything. Rather bristly, hairy. Two sets of plants here, both common cat's ear, a beautiful rosette on the left, showing the characteristic leaves very well. On the right, a multi-headed plant, but again, with broad leaves, broadest at their top, and big, fat lobes, which are as wide as the spaces in between. If we go on to look at the other plant, which fits type 2, this is autumn hawkbit, and it has a different type of leaf. Unfortunately, autumn hawkbit is one of the most variable of plants, but the main part of the blade of the leaf, as you will see, is much narrower. Here's an untoothed leaf, here's a toothed leaf, but the main part of the blade is much narrower, relatively speaking, than these big fat leaves we had with the cat's ear. You can see these are variably toothed. This one has very little in the way of toothing. This one has long teeth. Some of these leaves in the background have very long teeth, and where these are toothed, unlike cat's ear, the tooth itself is much narrower than the gap in between, which gives it this sort of fishbone appearance that you will have heard us talk about. The other jizz character is this looks a little bit like a piece of salad greens, whereas this one doesn't. So we have this wonderful character. Would you put it in your salad or not? It's variable, as I said, very variable. Here are some more plants, a multi-stocked plant of autumn hawkbit. Now, this is a new development. We only in reviewing what's coming in with our data, um, we need to talk about a fourth species here that is going to be common, well, that some of you will almost certainly encounter. Can you see this picture on the left? In the center here, we've got leaves very like those autumn hawkbit leaves we've just been looking at. But if you look carefully, this is a type 3 plant, okay? Basal rosette leaves here, but here I hope you can clearly see a stem leaf. This is not a small scale leaf, this is a big, fully developed leaf. And as you go up these flowering stems, you can see a number of fully developed leaves. So this is a plant with a branch stem with leaves on it. Here is an immature plant that's not yet in flower, which might baffle you. The leaves look a little bit like autumn hawkbit, but it can't possibly be autumn hawkbit because autumn hawkbit has all its leaves in a basal rosette. And we can see the beginning of the flower stem here, which has clearly got stem leaves on it. So this takes us to the hawk's beards, the crepices, and here's a typical picture of a rosette clearly with a branched stem. Clearly with a leafy flowering stem. A large number of crepices in Britain, but you are almost certainly only going to be encountering smooth hawksbeard. There is a possibility of beaked hawksbeard, but most of them are going to be small hawksbeard. Now, given the similarity between the leaves of smooth hawksbeard and autumn hawkbit, we need to look a little bit more about these vegetatively. And it's quite hard to find good images on the internet. So really good to know that old-fashioned black and white line drawings really can come up with the goods where photographs fail. So this picture is an illustration from Stella Ross-Craig's volumes. This is a 1962 drawing with autumn hawkbit on the left and smooth hawksbeard on the right. Here are those fishbone-shaped leaves. We know this is autumn hawkbit because it doesn't have a leafy stem. We are ignoring these small scales. Ross Craig's drawing shows beautifully the variability in the leaves. Over on the right, here's her drawing of the smooth hawksbeard, and you can see there is a basal leaf, there is the flowering stem, there's a clear stem leaf there, so she's showing us it's type 3. I want you to have a quick look at the leaves. Although these do look very similar, there's a tendency for hawksbeard leaves to be broader in the distal end. These are if you ignore the teeth and look just at the leaf shape of the main part of the tissue, this is a lanceolate leaf, whereas these are linear leaves. So just get your head around how those two differ. Here's herbarium sheets showing that thing, that very thing, an autumn hawkbit leaf in the middle here with a linear central part with the fishbone sticking out. These leaves are actually of beaked hawksbeard, not of smooth hawksbeard, but they show the same tendency of hawksbeards to have a flaring, unlobed distal part. Another set of beautiful illustrations. These are from Dora. These are Dora Keel's drawings from the New Illustrated British Flora of 1961. The same pair of species, and again, you can see the artist has captured this linear leaf, and over here, the flaring leaf. Here are the stem leaves of the hawksbeard, and in the drawing of the autumn hawkbit, no stem leaves. I have to say, Dora, that although these drawings are incredibly skilled and beautiful, I don't think I have ever seen an autumn hawkbit with bracts on the flowering scape as prominent as those, so they're a little bit misleading. Before we leave the hawksbits, we have had beaked hawksbeard cropping up in our data. As I say, most of your plants will be smooth hawksbeard. It's very, very variable. It's an annual, so it exploits gappy, droughted soils, and the plants can sometimes be tiny. I have plants in my own project which are about 6 or 7 centimeters tall, but they still have a branched leafy scape. And the observant people amongst you will have already noticed that the flowers tend to be smaller. It's the seeds that you need, unfortunately, to tell those two plants apart, beaked and smooth hawksbeard, but would be very happy with a record which identifies a hawksbeard without putting it to species. Right, I propose to end there. I propose to end with the yellow composites there. I've just seen we've had a couple of questions on chat. Should we have a look at those? How large can the corm in the bulbous buttercup get? Caroline, are people seeing this chat or not?
Yes,
yeah, okay. I found one. Okay, yeah. Let's deal with it now. That doesn't surprise me. I think I've seen them that size myself. It's a perennial plant. Okay, that's that one. And do we get to the next chat or not?
The first one was as far as saying messages. That's it.
Okay, great. Right, we're going to move on to the carrot family. A somewhat different approach here, in that I'm not going to give you many tips about telling umbellifers apart. It's too complicated and too subtle. But what I can do is, once again, the ones you are likely to encounter is only a very small subset of what you are led to believe you might encounter if you're just leafing through a picture book. So I've got 13 plants here out of 75 umbellifers in the British flora. So apologies if you feel you're getting short shrift here, but I'm trying to make this easy for everyone. So what I've done here is, by far the most likely taxa you are going to encounter are shown in bold capitals: hogweed and wild carrot. But I have divided the other possibilities in two ways, and you'll be able to look at this table later. I've divided them into 5 groups based on the circumstances you find yourself in your individual surveillance projects. A certain group of species creep in from the edge where there's been no treatment. These tend to be the larger umbellifers: cow parsley, rough chervil, upright hedge parsley, sometimes hemlock and stone parsley. You're unlikely to find those plants in the middle of your project. If you're monitoring an arable reversion or any other project where there's been large amounts of bare ground creation, you may get the annual arable weed fool's parsley. So these are all worth ringing in your field guides. An awareness of where your donor seed has come from will help you with a group of other species. Wild carrot has become quite a rare plant in old grassland in Herefordshire. This merits more investigation. But in the 2020s, it shows a strong association with resown swards. So if you know you've had an off-the-shelf mix, it's quite likely that you'll have wild carrot. Wild parsnip, ditto. It's a rare plant, but with us, but it will come in off-the-shelf seed mixes. Corky-fruited water drop we'll spend a little bit of time on in a second. Hogweed, I've said, is far and away the most likely thing you're going to find. The specialist umbellifers that we're after in old grasslands tend to be slow to colonize, but there are only three of them: pignut, burnet saxifrage, and pepper saxifrage. And we will look at a couple of those in a second. The other thing to say before leaving this slide is hairiness is an important character in umbellifers. So if you're sending in photos or you're photographing plants, some of this hairiness is very small. So make sure to check out a plant with a lens. The glabrous, hairless ones I've coded in green here, and the hairy ones in black. And you'll see that wild carrot and cow parsley can exist in both forms. I'm not advancing, Caroline. Why is that? It's
Oh dear. What have you done with the mouse? Oh, the mouse has gone. There we are. Is that going on?
Just bear with us whilst we thank you very much. Hogweed, by far the most likely. I'm sure all of you would recognize this image on the left as hogweed. You need to be able to recognize hogweed seedlings. Hogweed seedlings exhibit a phenomenon which is very interesting, which is although the size and shape of the first true leaves of seedlings is very different to their mature shape and size, the texture of the leaf is often very, very similar. So here's a very young hogweed plant on the right. You might not recognize that leaf, but if you look at the texture of it, including the petiole, you'll see how similar it is to the mature plant. This slide is all pictures of burnet saxifrage, which is a highly desirable plant, which does come quite quickly from seed. It seeds very well in my project, and I get new plants coming from seed all the time. So you may pick it up in a local seed mix. The thing about burnet saxifrage, it's hairy, but it has very variable leaves. The basal leaves here are hardly divided. They look a little bit like salad burnet, hence the name of the plant. And indeed, the records for salad burnet in Herefordshire. Salad burnet is a rare plant with us. It's a lime lover. We don't have much lime. I am convinced that many of our records are actually mistaken identity for the first stage leaves of burnet saxifrage. You can see as the plant gets older, as with many plants, its subsequent leaves are more heavily divided. This is still burnet saxifrage here. You can see that's very different. This is a late flowering plant. Flowering times can be helpful when you're dealing with umbellifers. This plant's not really flowering until July. Here is pignut for a contrast. This is a very early flowering plant, of course. It's generally seeded by the time the harvesters are out collecting meadow seed. It's generally finished by the time botanists are out as well. You frequently encounter it in this form with its basal leaves starting to die back and becoming yellow. Both these pictures show pignut. Just an example of one of these more finely divided umbellifers. All of us often have to keep plants like this under observation and pop back to see how they develop later in the year. There's no shame in that. Here's the corky-fruited water droplet. I've only put this in because it's starting to crop up in our county. 20 years ago, this plant had never been recorded in Herefordshire. I now know of it in 3 places. It's clearly being spread on contractors' cutting machinery. Most people, when they see it, instantly recognise it as something they've not seen before. You can see this is a plant that was found up near Leominster. You can see it's got very divided leaves like pignut, but I think you will know if you see this. I'm asking you to keep a lookout for it. We're trying to monitor its spread. Okay, that's it for umbels. Shall we have a look at this chart? Okay for time? One new, just scroll on the slider. Yeah. Would I ever use sensor? Fantastic question. Yes, I would. If you look back at the species I've been talking about, stone parsley is instantly identifiable by its smell. Books sometimes say it's fetid. Many people think it smells of petrol. I think it smells a little bit like coriander. And you can use taste for identifying pepper saxifrage. Yeah, I think provided you spit out what you're tasting, there are no risks with oh my god, what am I saying? I might be held to account here.
It's fine.
Yeah, better anything you suspect might be hemlock, you should probably avoid. Right. How can I minimize that? Here?
Yeah.
Just right. Okay, we're going to go on to vetches because rather like yellow umbellifers, we also need to revisit this. Yeah, in the light of the monitoring data, we need to revisit vetches. Here's the mini herbarium sheet, which is on the website, and it deals with the 3 common natives, which are common vetch, tufted vetch, and bush vetch. That is a beautiful, if somewhat atypically large leaf of bush vetch, which illustrates how it differs from all the others in that its leaflets are ovate, which means egg-shaped, and so they look like a row of eggs on the shelf. Contrast that with these 2, whose leaves are widest in the middle, not in the basal third. Okay, so that sheet is there for you to look at on the website. Moving on again. Thank you. Yeah, so this presentation includes a revised key to help you deal with 2 additional species, 2 annual species, the tares. If you have not seen a key in this form before, it just presents a series of questions in columns, So a first question, second question in the second column here, a third question, etc., etc. So the first question we've dealt with, are the leaflets egg-shaped or not? If they are, it takes you straight to bush vetch. So that aid is there for you to dip into whenever you like. Just quickly look ahead. This group all have oval leaflets. Tufted vetch, very desirable, densely silky, hairy. So here's a close-up of tufted vetch. You need to get this under your lens. You'll see the upper leaf surface is very hairy, but the lower surface is even more distinctive. You can see on some of these leaflets, this is adpressed, i.e. flattened, silky hairiness. The hairs are dense and flattened to the extent that they give the leaflets on the underside this silky sheen. The others are hairy, but they don't have that quantity of hair. Now, the other one that we've been dealing with before now, that was in that original table, is common vetch, which is a very variable plant, which doesn't have the eggs on a shelf leaf shape, as you can see from this slide, doesn't have the silky hairiness. This is an annual, it's very variable. This picture on the right shows a couple of common vetch plants from my own project, where I've got both of the, well, there's 3 subspecies of this plant in Britain. We're not necessarily asking you to identify the subspecies. If you can put it to the species, that's fantastic. But on the left here, we have our native subspecies, which has narrow leaves and often only one leaflet. And on the right, we have an archaeophyte taxon, been in the country for 2,000 years or more, but is not a native plant. Much bigger, broader leaves. There's actually 2 taxa on the left. There's actually both of these taxa on the left are the native subspecies with smaller flowers. You can see what a huge size difference there is between those two subspecies. The purple spot is what helps you identify this taxon. This picture, perhaps the spots, which are they're nectaries used by ants. They're not often as vivid as this, but they can usually be seen quite clearly with a lens. So there's the table again with the 3 species we've been traditionally concerned about boxed in bold. We're now going to move on and look at these 2 additional tares, which are sparsely hairy, like common vetch. We're going to deal with hairy tare first. Hairy tare is a plant with a lot of leaflets. Notice that the number of leaflets in itself is not really a very helpful diagnostic character, but when you look at the range overall, it is quite helpful. Hairy tare with up to 10 leaflets is going to be confused with tufted vetch, which also has a large number of leaflets. So here's hairy tare. You can see how that leaf looks very like a tufted vetch leaf. You will be able to rule that out by examining for silky hairiness. This particular plant is in flower. It's got rather much less showy flowers than tufted vetch. And if these plants are in flower, you will very successfully be able to identify them using a picture matching technique, which is why I'm focusing on these vegetative characters. So you can tell that from tufted vetch by the fact that it doesn't have the silky hairiness, and it's got very distinctive stipules. It's got antler-like stipules. Just see some of these in this photograph here and here. That's a really useful character for identifying that plant right from the word go. Smooth tear is perhaps slightly harder. It's got none of those positive identifying characters, but you, in theory, should be able to identify it by the fact that it has a combination of it's not eggs on a shelf, it doesn't have silky hairiness, and it doesn't have a spot on its stipule. It has a rather small number of leaflets, which are often, rather than being opposite, are often alternate. That's not a diagnostic character. Other vetches can do that, but it can be helpful. Remember, always it's probably slightly more helpful to bag material of problem plants than it is to take a photo, because there are very good resources for identifying plants using detailed vegetative characters. We can come back to the main one in the discussion later if you so wish. But I have lost count of the number of times that I wish that I had bagged a specimen in the field rather than photographing it. We all do it. That's it for the vetches, but whilst we're on the legumes, we might as well refresh our memories about some of the others. Meadow vetchling, a very distinctive plant, big yellow pea-shaped flowers. The leaf only has a pair of leaflets and no, it does have a tendril actually. It only has a pair of leaflets. It's got these very distinctive, enormous arrow-shaped stipules, and when it comes out of the ground in spring, that's what you see, and it always baffles newcomers. So absorb that characteristic shape there. On the subject of small legumes, let's just have a quick look at 3 trefoils here. Just reminding you that when you get a small clover with yellow flowers, it's going to be either black medic or lesser trefoil. 9 times out of 10, the other trefoils are less common in Herefordshire and their heads are much bigger. You know you've got something different. With these 2, you need to look at the middle leaflet of the 3 leaflets in the compound leaf. And the lesser trefoil leaflet has an emarginate leaflet, a dent in the top, whereas the black medic leaflet has a little apiculus sticking up. That works very well. Here's the bird's foot trefoil for comparison. And we treat that separately because it's essentially a compound leaflet with 5 leaflets, whereas this other pair really only have 3 leaflets. you can see on the black medic it does have prominent stipules, but they are very different structures to the 3 leaflets on the compound leaf. So just whilst we are following up from bird's foot trefoils, here's a typical picture of common bird's foot trefoil. I like this picture. My neighbour recently re-sowed a ryegrass ley, and it was just a very simple ley, but bird's foot trefoil popped up. It was not a horticultural cultivar, an agricultural cultivar. These plants have come from the seed bank, which is wonderful. These are wild plants, come from the seed bank. We've got 2 bird's foot trefoils, common bird's foot trefoil and greater bird's foot trefoil. The floras are slightly misleading in that they encourage you to look for whether the stem is hollow or not, which is a difficult character to interpret at the best of times, and is particularly difficult in Herefordshire, where our trefoils grow together in grazed and cut pasture and are generally of smaller stature than the greater bird's foot trefoil gets in other parts of Britain. Those of you who've been out in the field with me will probably be aware of how I really think the most reliable and excellent character for telling these 2 apart is to hold them up to the light with a lens and see if the veins are translucent. So at the top here is a micrograph of common bird's foot trefoil. If you ignore the blotchy greenness, which is just an artifact of the pressing process, and just concentrate on the general tissue, you'll see that apart from this very basal section of vein here, you can't really make much of the veins out. They are opaque. If you hold greater bird's foot trefoil, sometimes called marsh bird's foot trefoil, so apologies if I'm using both terms and confuse you. It's the same plant. If you hold this up to the light, not only is the main vein translucent, but the secondary veins are beautifully translucent. So if you've tried that but failed, that's what you're looking for. It's a fantastically reliable character. When it's in flower, things are much easier because of a range of floral characters. Okay, a few miscellaneous slides now. I think we'll just leave the chat questions, the new chat questions now for the end. A few miscellaneous slides now at the end. A review of our existing monitoring data showed us that quite frequently people are encountering annual cranes bills come from the seed bank in their quadrat sample findings. The 2 that you're almost certainly what you find if you find these plants is almost certainly going to be one of 2 taxa, either Geranium molle, the dove's foot cranesbill, or Geranium dissectum, the cut-leaved cranesbill. There's the cut-leaved cranesbill. There is the dove's foot cranesbill. You do need to be aware that, as we see in bulbous buttercup and as we saw in burnet saxifrage, the first leaves of Geranium dissectum are not always as dissected as that. You can see from this range of pictures here that some of these younger leaves can sometimes be a bit confusing. By the time you're out in the field, you will probably have abundant examples of this type of dissectum leaf, and in fact you're more likely to confuse that possibly with something like meadow buttercup than you are with dove's foot cranespell. Here's a quick slide of a plant which often foxes people because it's rather anonymous. This is self-heal with its simple leaves in opposite pairs, and as some of you may have seen, this very characteristic goose bumps texture because the base of the hairs have a slightly risen base. Always worth getting the material angled correctly under your lens in bright sunshine to check for that. A quick slide of some thistles, mainly because this slide from my garden shows all the three common species alongside one another. Thistles are really about jizz, and you could spend a long time trying to describe them, so I'm not. You probably recognise your thistles. Here is a creeping thistle, and here is a marsh thistle. Here is a spear thistle. These two are biennials with a rosette sitting flat on the ground. This is a perennial with individual shoots, one here, coming out of the ground more like a fountain. We can go back to that in a second if anyone wants to. A quick slide to show how many of the plants we're dealing with are perennials, and they are connected by rhizomes under the ground. This is a secondary grassland, and you can see beautifully how the yarrow and the lady's bedstraw are both forming patches. This is spreading through rhizomes, possibly some new recruitment by seed here in these scattered Achillea plants. But you need to bear things like this in mind when you're out quadrat sampling, because you may well have, for example, lady's bedstraw plants here, just a metre away or two from a flowering patch. We're not going to deal with seedlings today because we've not been asked to, but I've included this to illustrate the point I made earlier on, that although the first true seed leaves of many plants are radically different in shape, their texture is often remarkably similar. So the cotyledons of spear thistle on the right, and not a desirable thing to have seedlings of, and common black knapweed on the left are very similar. But as soon as you get a first true leaf, look, you can tell what's going on. Here, look, is the thistle is already bearing its spines on the main surface of the leaf. The knapweed isn't, and if you look very carefully at the knapweed leaf, you'll see that those characteristic small millimetre teeth which you get on the edge of knapweed leaves, no matter what size they are, one there, look, and one there, are present in the very first true seed leaf. So I think we can wrap up there. I've just finished. Am I okay for another 2 minutes?
Yeah. Is that okay, Rory? I'm sure.
Is that okay, Rory?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, I've ended with 2 slides. One to show a species-rich, semi-improved grassland that some of you might be beginning to deal with. Look at that. That's a really diverse sward, a high herb cover, a range of things in there. Really, really good quality semi-improved grassland. All of those plants, however, are ready colonizers. Here's the real McCoy that we're aiming to conserve and maybe learn to recreate in full one day, with equal diversity, but many of the plants in that picture are slow to recolonize and need more of a helping hand. There you go, just a little inspiring picture to finish with. Yeah, Caroline's just pointing out We've got uh, um, uh, a green-winged orchid, sorry, a green-winged orchid there, and a common spotted orchid there to the right. Okay, end slideshow.
Lovely, thank you. Shall we stop sharing
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
And then everybody's back. Great.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Stuart. I think there are a couple of questions that have come through in the chat now. So if you want to open that up and have a look at those, I'll leave you to do that. And then while Stuart's doing that, if anyone else has any further questions, you want to...
Okay, can you explain how to distinguish species from agricultural or horticultural cultivars? Is it mainly size? Yes, it is mainly the size. It's probably fair to say that most of the glaringly obvious ones have been bred for their legumes, and they've been bred for agricultural rather than horticultural use. So we're typically thinking of bird's foot trefoil, which is the cultivar, which I try to map separately, is like an ordinary bird's foot trefoil on steroids. You'll see it's 2 or 3 times the size, but you will not be able to see through the veins. Everyone is sowing agricultural cultivars of a variety of different clovers these days in their herbal leys, particularly red clover. It's a larger and more erect plant. There's no easy rule, but I think it's fair to say that they will stop you in your tracks, and you will think, hang on a minute, what's going on here? So a hard one to pin down. Someday we could maybe put a list together of the species we need to be particularly careful about, which are present in both wild and modified forms. A totally related question, but a captive group of botanists. Are there any botanical historians in Herefordshire? Polly, do you want to explain a bit more what you mean by that?
Am I okay to do it audibly? Can you hear me?
Can you hear her?
You'll have to translate for me.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Polly.
so Caroline, so what we want to do is do some work to explain for the biodiversity strategy in Longtown and the surrounding areas, try to explain the history to the community of the flora. So I was thinking maybe if there's somebody who had historical awareness of what the landscape was like and what the flora was like, we might be able to get them to come and do a talk.
Okay, Polly wants to explain to people in the Longtown area the historical aspects of what the flora used to be like.
Okay, so it's not about historians, it's about landscape history. Is that right?
And plants history, you want to know about the different species that would have been predominant in swards?
Yeah, and what the landscape would have looked like, because I'm pretty certain it would have been woodland pasture from what I've seen.
Well, the short answer, Polly, is yes, there are such people. I'm very interested in this subject, and I'm working on it all the time, and I would like to be able to explain to people what past landscapes look like. We know that things have been decimated. Decimated means to reduce by 1/10, doesn't it? In fact, if only we'd been decimated, but we've been decimated twice. But we don't exactly know what things would have looked like. I think it's becoming quite clear that the landscape's very polarized. We would have had much more intermediate habitats. Caroline and I have been invited to speak at a conference later this summer about Herefordshire Parkland, where we were probably going to be dealing with this subject a little bit. David Lovelace is someone you may know who's been very interested in landscape history. No one has pulled it together yet in one place, but we're working on it, and I would like to make it a very prominent part of a future flora of Herefordshire.
Good question.
Excellent question. Really, really excellent
And
question.
the tithe maps can be very helpful to show how short-term arable crops were very present in the Black Mountains.
Absolutely so. I mean, the tithe maps have been very useful to me in trying to understand plant distribution in the Backton area, very near to Longtown. You know, you wonder why the plant pattern in one field is so different, and you go to the tithe maps and you see it was an arable field about 60 or 70 years ago. Very, very informative.
Fantastic, thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone else?
We're going out with our torches to look for bulbous buttercup.
We've just had a comment, I think, rather than a question. Charlie and Sarah saying that they're working on a historic parkland restoration project with a landscape architect input. So happy to share a contact in due course. Early stages there. So perhaps there's an opportunity, Polly, for you to coordinate with Charlie, follow up with Charlie. I can facilitate that for you guys.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Just before we end, hopefully this is going to work. I'm just going to share my screen with you all just to show you, hopefully now you can all see my screen there, just to show you on our website where this new portal is for where we're storing all the information to help you as Meadow monitors. So if you navigate to our website, the tab which is support us, you click that, click on volunteer, and it will take you through to this page. And then here there is a button, Meadow monitors login. I've already logged in, so I will go straight through. Hopefully this will work. Maybe not while I'm showing the screen. Oh, there we go. So now hopefully you can see on here that this is.
Okay, great.
Can you see, everyone see this? So this is the Meadow Monitors resource page for you. We've got all the problem pairs help sheets, the herbarium sheets, the Stuart's that he's mentioned, they're all here. We've got grass ID help sheets at the bottom. So for those of you who came on our grass ID training day, these are Stuart's diagrams here. And then we've also got all the documents in here of the health and all the policies, the agreement, further plant ID resources, and we will also be putting in there survey resources. We will put in the slightly amended survey sheets that we're going to be using for this year, which we are just tweaking so that they align with how we are processing the data as well. This is password protected for the first time that you use it on your device. The password is the Latin for cowslip. It's primula veris, all in lower cases. But I will send this out to you all as a follow-up via email. So that's all there, live and ready to go for all of you to use. And we've also been recording this session, and we will upload the recording of this session into this password protected page on our website as well. So you can watch it over again in your own time. Okay, I will stop sharing. So that brings us to a close.
Stuart's got one book he'd like just to flash up.
I'm not sure whether this is amongst the resources, but I did allude to this in the talk. Are you getting that in mirror writing, or is it?
Oh, it's good.
The vegetative key to. Oh dear.
The Vegetative Key to the British Flora by Poland and Clement. I'm not suggesting you get it, but it's an extremely helpful book if you're stumped with plant material that's not in flower.
I think it's where you got the lovely picture of the stipules on
Indeed,
the veg.
The antler stipules of the hairy tear was from here. Yeah.
I'm Poland and Clement, is that? Yep. There you go. I've just dropped a link to it in the chat. Okay, fantastic. Well, that concludes our winter webinar. Thank you so much to Stuart for a very informative and detailed talk. And thank you all of you for joining. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully soon, hopefully at our forum. And if not, then as I say, 27th of May, save the dates. That is our expected date for doing our field refresher training session for this summer's survey season.